you? Can you hear me?
I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, because this is how nervous I was.
Girl,
Yeah, are you good?
I'm good. Besides the nerves, I am so good. I'm happy to
That
see
we
you,
decided to
man.
go for the same lip color. I guess some things never change.
But I saw it from you, so.
So thank you so much for agreeing. As nervous as we both are, I think
Yeah,
that this conversation is really going to um, help us and help a lot of people as well, because growth is growth and life.
life, in life, in life, Ayanda.
So we're just going to have a discussion because we come a long way.
Yeah,
Our friendship has gone through the most, and
yeah,
not only that, I mean, I think we were girls and now we're grown women, and there's so
yeah.
much that has happened between that period, an entire metamorphosis actually, that at some
Sure,
point it's so important for us to reintroduce ourselves to each other, and
sure.
and share the experiences and the learning and so forth and so forth. So yeah, how do you feel?
I'm so nervous, but Jay, no, thanks, friends. I really appreciate you getting me out of my comfort zone and pushing me literally over the edge. I've never done a live, so this will be my first one. So thank you. Sure, guys. No, we've changed. We've had to change. Impilo has demanded that. Honestly speaking, a lot has happened. I mean, such Bilana, smiling, Ayanda, smiling, I think it was literally 2012 or 2011-ish when I can say we did life together. You know what I mean? And then a lot of things, changed over the years. We grew apart even, if we could be honest, grew apart and we had to discover life on our own without each other. And I don't think anyone planned for that, but life surprised us. God had a plan. But here we are though.
Yeah.
Here we are. I think that's the beauty of it. Here we are, Ayanda, and we can literally testify of the goodness of God and the grace of God in preserving us
Yeah.
and doing the work, the work of healing and
Yeah.
and just cleaning and the deep cleaning
Yeah. That is
of the
still going
soul.
on.
Which
I
is
don't
still
know.
going on. It's happening.
Yeah. So for
It
me,
never stops.
I've wanted to have this conversation for the longest of time,
Sure.
and I wanted to identify someone that I know that I could relate with, someone that understands the background that we come from and that has had to learn stuff on their own, and discover, and how much room the church actually allows for us to go through these changes. Because I've noted something, that whenever we start changing or evolving or growing or maturing, there's a process in the church that does not allow for people to find themselves. Because when I have to find myself, it means I'm at the backside of some desert, and I'm being stripped by God in whichever way that He's choosing to do so. And so there's just a lot that I wanted us to talk about. I wanted us to talk about stuff that we learned back then that we have had to unlearn in order for us to grow, and things that we've had to unlearn in order for us to forgive ourselves as well, and just what that journey
Sure.
looked like. So I don't know how to prepare anything, so you're gonna have to just bear with me. I had some points, And before we
Okay.
get to it, I'm just going to introduce, because I can see some people are on, to introduce who we are. I'm Ayanda, and I've got one of my bestest friends, Abulele, and we just want to talk about the journey that we both in. We both were in very public ministries from a very young age, and what that looks like. I know it has been woo, a lot,
Yeah.
and people really take it for granted how much it takes for you to go through something so publicly and still believe that you've got a place in the kingdom. I don't know. It takes a lot, and I
Yeah.
want us to talk about that. Let me see
Yeah.
what's in here. Give me 1 second. Let me try find it. Yeah, maybe Abu, you can just start in terms of
Okay.
the yeah. So how are you doing, and how old are you now? And yeah, go
Really?
ahead. I'll find my notes.
No, it's cool. Sheesh. No, it's been a journey, definitely. Being raised, I'll say raised in a church environment really shaped and molded my sense of identity from a very young age, because I was born again at like 16, I think. Um, and so, born again on fire for the Lord Jesus, and being in an environment where other young people like yourself were on fire for God, and we really dedicated literally our entire lives around serving in the house of God, around just really surrendering our lives to the Lord the best way we knew how in that time, in the best way we were taught, in that time. If someone could call us church rats, I think we were that, because Monday to Monday, and it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. It came from the heart. It was genuine. I think it protected us a lot, at that time. And I'm always grateful. I always look back to those days and I say, those were divine moments that really shaped the trajectory of our lives. And I don't think we would be where we are without those foundational moments in Bulunze too. That's where I met you, Aya. That's where we met. It has to be divine. So really, that's where we come from. I was born again at the Christian Center, at the Jesus Dome, under Pastor Fred's literally like ministry. He introduced Christ to me, and I've never looked back. And I mean, it's the greatest honor, the greatest treasure, everything that I am. Has never been the same because of that day, because of that moment. And like you said, grow because of the passion, we were so intentional about making sure that we don't waste time. It's kind of,
Yeah.
we are in the church and we're doing our best to also inspire other young people to follow suit. I think that was also another big thing for us, especially being in a youth ministry. And then there came a time where God introduced, I'll speak for myself when I am, introduced me to growth in a way that I would have never seen coming. And I'll say it's growth, but it was painful. So I moved out of the church, local church that I had been in for 6 years, went into a new space. What my heart was, I want to serve. I want to see this church thrive. I want to see God begin to touch and shape and mold lives, and I want to be a part of this, because I have a background, and that background was you serve, you introduce Christ, you live a life that is worthy of God's calling, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to do that and really just, give that into that new church. It was a fairly new church. And that's where I think I'll say growth for me began to sort of take place, because now it's a new environment. I'm out of my comfort zone. Just even from the way Christ is presented was different from the way, Christ is worshipped. It's the same, but it's actually not the same. The culture, everything. So I had to adjust and navigate that space. It was not an easy one, because like any church, I think there's some things that we will agree and be in line with, and there's some things that we can't relate to, and you've got to find a way somewhere, somehow. I don't know, there's always that thin line.
I want to ask you something that I think might help a lot of people, right? There's a passion for Christ that we both had, and that we both can go back and look at and be like, yo, we were those girls that were just, on fire for God, always praying. And we poured our hearts into the church. Like, we did everything. We were short of mopping the floors, braiding people's hair. Like, we just wanted to, we could have done anything. God knows we could have done anything. And people misunderstand the passion for the identity. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, at which point in that entire journey would you say that you began to find Abulele? You began to mold your personality outside of your passion? Because I know, for me, like, so I've got a personality that will a lot of people were like, I've got a huge personality. The music that I listen to, from the clothes that I love wearing, from the shape, and I find people not understanding, or they cannot reconcile the anointing from
the anointed girl.
So when would you say? And I know with me, it started and quite late. I had to find myself outside of the four walls of the church, and find myself and say, okay, actually, this is Ayanda, apart from what people wanted her to be. When would you say, Ubuti, from the time we started serving as young people and following Christ and being these examples to people, and we didn't even know what that meant, when did you find Abulele, and how did that journey come about?
That journey, friends, took place around 2012, when I left the church that I was just talking about, because I ended up leaving anyways, and I didn't know where I was going. All I knew is that I had to leave, and I was feeling that I had lost a lot of me, and not just a lot of me, I had lost a relationship with Jesus that left me broken. And really in a dark place, to be honest, emotionally as well. And so I started out on that journey, really. At first, I tried to find a space where I can continue with what I knew. But then soon enough, I realized that you can never recreate something by your own strength that was initiated by God, and if God says this is it, if it's cut off, that's it. You can't recreate it. And it took me a while to realize that, because I kept trying to recreate that space. I want to serve, but now the brokenness is there. The hurt is there. I'm not sure how to deal with this. And the moment I sat down and said, okay, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. I found God, in the most painful moments of my life. I was trying to figure out, God, I thought I was doing right. I thought I was making all the right decisions. My heart was in the right place. I gave it everything. And it was just like,
there's a point where you like, God, I'm the girl that put in the hours. Like, why am I lost? Why am I depressed? Why am I suicidal? I'm the girl.
Dude, like, I didn't have a life because I thought, this is it for me. And sometimes I want to say that it's very important that we realize that some of the things actually God never spoke, but we looked and admired and tried to emulate and really shaped our identity based on what we saw and admired, and which was good, but it was never for us. And I think that is one of the things that I discovered, that I could never be you. I could never be Mpume. I could never be Sis Mpume, or I could never be Tandy. Those are our friends, by the way. But I could never be any of my girls, you know, or anyone that I look up to. And it was in that moment where I really had to sit down and just wait on God and just ask God to help me figure out where to from here. And in those moments, because I was weary in my spirit, I think that's very important to highlight. I was so weary, I was tired, but I knew that I needed church community, but I didn't want, just for me, for my own selfish reasons, I didn't want to serve. I didn't want to do anything in the church. I just needed to be there for whatever I needed and out.
Yeah.
And I was weary. So it's in those moments that I then made, you know, some of my worst decisions in Bilonyami. As you will know, if you've tuned into my YouTube channel or you know me on a personal level, I then had a baby out of wedlock. And it was in those times of weariness, of me trying to figure out where to from here, you know, trying to deal with the pieces that I have left in my hands. And I did make some of the very, very bad decisions. But I won't say totally bad, because I've got an amazing, beautiful son that God blessed me with from that experience, as bad as it was. But, you know, I'm so grateful for my boy. But it was in those moments of weariness and being tired and secluded.
I want to ask you something, Abu, which let me know, Wuti, how you feel about sharing and to what extent you want to share. When you had your son, right, and I know that you've shared the story out of wedlock, you know, the person that you were, the ministry that you had at that time, it's very public, right?
Yeah.
I cannot even imagine, because Tina, we've got a tendency of really shying away from really dealing with these issues, and especially when we don't. And the thing is, what I found as well within the church, we don't allow people to come back into the church community. They almost have to find themselves, as though they did not belong in the first place, as though that kind of situation almost kicks you out of a church community. You know, you no longer belong. And I don't know whether it's because we've created that society because it's not in the word, you know, or whether it's in our own mind, where we feel, how can I possibly go back? I was a worshiper, I was this, people look up to me. How much of you, what work went into the background of you convincing yourself, with Lalela, I'm gonna take my son and I'm gonna take him to church, and I'm gonna worship the God that I love and the God that I serve, never mind anything else? How was that process like?
It was a journey. Obviously, it was not an overnight process. But I think one advice that I can remember from an elder in the church who came to see me during that time, I was still pregnant actually, and I was going to church. But she said to me, at the end of the day, Abu, it will always be you and Jesus. Forget every other voice. What is the Lord saying to you? And that's what you need to ride on. That's what you need to base everything about this journey, this experience that you are going through on. Not what everyone else thinks, not even what sometimes you think of yourself. Because sometimes we are our own worst enemies. We break ourselves down because of, again, the expectations we placed on ourselves as well. So it was that advice, honestly, and Ayanda, that helped me to always remember that I don't need to perform salvation. I don't need to perform a relationship with Jesus. I just have to walk out my own genuine experience with Christ and do my very best to position my heart in the purest form that it could ever be in before God, and allow God to do a work in me. you know,
I
and I
think
can't.
you got me at I don't need to perform salvation. Like you finished me right there. I don't need to perform salvation.
I can't perform something so divine, Ayanda. It's divine. I can't carry it out by my own strength. You know what I mean? If God began it, surely God is faithful to pick me up in the middle of it. You know, and he never lied when he spoke in the beginning, right? So if what I've always believed was true, what the word of God has always said was true, it had to be true in that moment. Yes, my emotions wrestled with me. Yes, my surroundings. Yes, the shame and the guilt wrestled with me. But I had to, at the end of the day, resolve in my heart and that I will not take any other opinion apart from what God says about me. And that's what's carried me through who's been unplanned, where I don't have to walk with shame or guilt. Does that make me less repentant? No, it doesn't, because I don't need to prove my repentance to anyone. To anyone, seriously, I don't need to prove my repentance to anyone. Let my journey, let my walk speak for itself. I believe that's very important. Like, let my life speak for itself. Yeah.
I want to sorry to interject there, Abu. There's this notion, right, that we have, and I don't know where it comes from once again, because I've never read a perfect biblical story. There's this thing that we have in our minds to say that my life is only ministry when it's good.
Ooh.
And then it's no longer ministry when it's bad. And I don't understand how we came to that understanding, because in the midst of my, whether it could be my shame or the midst of my downfall or the midst of anything, how do you know if that was still not part of my story? Why are we to go into someone's page and be like, yeah, usewi, ngiweke p, ngiwisofa. You know? And so for me, I find it odd that the minute we go through something that does not exude strength or power, then we step away and we say, I'm no longer relevant, as though pain still cannot help somebody. Because right now, we're telling a story, but I can bet you now, it's in the midst of that pain that someone is saying, oh my gosh, I can actually relate to that. Not when you're powerful, because even when you're powerful, it's only God that can take the glory,
Come on. That is so true. And that's what I struggled with, especially during the pregnancy, where I was like, it feels like I was only good enough when I was doing right. But now that I have done this, it's literally removed and out of the picture. And this is not to say just out of the picture, everyone that would have been close around me, that I believe would have been family and would have walked with me this journey, was no longer there. And that's where I found myself. It was just me and God all over again. And, and I had to accept that. And I chose to accept it. And I chose to not hold anything against anyone. This is my journey. This is my walk. And this is my story with Christ. And I can't look elsewhere for any explanation or point people. I have to. You know what I'm saying? Because most of the times we can dwell in the wrong places, and then the thing that we need to learn in that season we will not find if we're looking at the wrong places. Exactly.
I remember I was sitting in a counseling session with one of the girls in the church, and she said something to me that blew me away. She said, whenever I come to you, I want to come human, but you can't be. So when you listen to my story, please understand my weakness, but not yours. But yours, no, not from the podium. From the podium,
you can't be
And let me take you to my story. I remember, I think it was 3 years ago or 3 years ago, where 3 or 4 years ago, where I was done with ministry. I was done. And the painful thing about me at that time was that I was done, but I was there. Like, you know.
Yeah. So
And
you were done
yeah, I was
in the
like,
heart.
it's over, you know.
Okay.
And people couldn't pick it up, because it doesn't mean that because you have taken a back seat that what God has gifted you with doesn't operate. It will operate at the worst of times, it will operate at the best of times. It's not dictated, it's a gift. And so I remember I was supposed to go preach somewhere, and I was on a poster. I woke up that morning and I was like, I'm not going. Like, I'm not going. I lied to people. I was like, I'm sick. Like,
that must have taken a lot.
The lines that I had to tell to cover up how unhappy I was with everything that with the mandate that God had given me. It was a lot.
Sure.
And I remember the turning point where I looked at myself in the mirror and God said to me, what do you see? And I said to him, I see an absolute mess that knows the word of God. Like, I will Genesis to Revelations.
Yo.
But Lord, Mina, I am
give mess right now. Give mess.
You know, and it was a journey, and it was such a journey, and that's why I wanted us to have this conversation, to say, Wuti, there comes a condemnation that does not come from anywhere else, that comes from the amount of time that you put in building who you were, and you almost feel like you are disappointing the caliber of person that you've built yourself to be. Like, the condemnation, Abu, is not even coming from people. It's coming from when you're alone and thinking, I have put in so much work. Is this really me? Is this going to be the end? You know, so for me, a phone call, it wasn't what people thought. It wasn't even coming from the church. It came from God. If you do not save me for anything else, can you save me for the prayer I made in 2010?
Yeah. Sure.
Right now, I don't have it in me, you know, and it was a very, very dark place. And I just want to tell people that being in the forefront, which is not even something that you pick, it's not even something that you choose. And I don't know how many times I've sat and in front of the church and said to them, if I knew that when I sought God, it involved you, I don't even know if I would have, right? I didn't know that my gift was connected to you. I was just seeking God, and we were just loving him. You were not in my thoughts, you know. So the fact that now, whether you survive your journey or not, is reliant on whether I get up from where I am. It was never something I had to reconcile myself with. You know,
that's heavy.
Hard. It's hard being in the forefront.
That is heavy.
Being looked at by people. It's hard being a role model. At the moment I look up to you and you're just like, do you know me?
Really?
I wouldn't even look up to me.
Even I don't even look at you.
You almost want to point people to the right direction. Like, if I were you, I would look up to
I would just be like,
I wanted to
totally. I get you.
I wanted to quickly talk about growth, right? What in our background, in our foundation, you know, I also look back at us as those young girls that were always in the throne room, prayer room, those girls that were always greeted by boys, those guys, you were hectic. We were.
Don't touch the anointed.
If we were walking, I'm sure you could feel fire. We were those girls. You know?
Like, what do you need?
Yeah, I think though, out of all of us, I was the first one to date. I think out of everyone.
No, you were naughty.
Yeah, I was naughty.
You were
naughty.
Like,
I need to share this revelation with someone's son.
Oh God!
I was the first one to date. I was like, guys, you continue. Praise the Lord. I need someone standing next to me so I can share with
I'm
you.
like, how is this girl doing this? And then she comes with a word from above.
So
I remember.
I want us to look at and I look at us and I don't regret anything, as you were saying. As much as we're so, I mean, so many things were made out of religion, and so many things were made out of fear
Yeah.
as well, more than the word
Yeah.
of the relationship. But I mean, for me, all things work together. Your growth process, where you had to almost unlearn that unlearn those regulations that were binding us at that time. What do you feel like the church lied to you about? And I know it's a bold statement, because
Yeah.
no lie can come out of a church, if you know what I mean. But I look
Yeah.
at us back then and I think, was that really bad? With the doctrine that was that, it didn't give us enough room to do anything, and
Yeah.
what
I think
now do you look back at and be like, I had to unlearn that. I had to unlearn that so that I can understand who I am.
I think because of the way my life was set up during that time, one of the things that happened was I didn't have a local church for a while. I was looking for a local church, but I really couldn't settle into a place that I felt was it for me. So what happened was during that time, I had to then really be the one who's responsible for the flame in my heart, for the passion. And I had to I had to come to a realization. But if I don't if I don't flame into whatever, flow into flames, whatever. You know what I mean? The passion of Christ. If I don't, like I said, I can't perform the salvation thing. If I don't do it, if I'm not getting up and praying, if I'm not the one going and being proactive in pursuit of a local church, of people that are authentic in their walk with God, or at least pursuing that in their walk, no one will do it for me. And so I had to take ownership and responsibility of my own salvation during that time, because now I don't have people around me. And that's where for me growth came, because then I'm owning this thing. I have to own this thing. No one can fan into flame my passion for Christ during this time. Only Christ is the one. He's available. And if I believe he's available at home with me.
Yeah.
He's available at work, because my greatest encounters during that time were in my office, believe it or not, late in my office after work. And it was in those moments that I was so encouraged by God. Whatever was going through, God would come through for me. And then it was then that I realized, no, man, that thing, because we were raised to believe that you have to really devote your time to church 24/7, 7 days a week. Now we've grown up. We can't practically be able to do that. And so for me, it made me realize that sometimes we're taught doctrines or, principles that sometimes I feel are based on fear of people having too much time in their hands, and might not be obedient to the voice of God during that time. And so it's almost like there is a lack of trust on what God can achieve in an individual walking out their journey, not necessarily in church 24/7.
Yeah.
And so I discovered that, no, man, whether I'm in church on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday or not, if God is with me, I have to take ownership of my own journey. I have to take ownership of my salvation there.
On that point, so I want to. There's a lady that is a friend of mine, and she also was in a similar background and church structure and etc. And we were both on fire. And then I'm not gonna say footy, she backslid, because that's just her part. I can't judge it, because still in the midst of that, there are things that are coming out of there that are mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
And so, to cut the long story short, she just started finding herself out of a system that can cushion you and make you believe you've got things that you do not have. The thing about company, which is great, the Bible, it says we need to keep the right company, but sometimes we become so dependent on what we are known for, that we lose who you are once you've separated from that group. And I think that's what happened with us.
Absolutely.
We were just
Absolutely.
known to those girls, and then the minute we separated, each person had to find themselves in whichever way that God was still leading them, right? So this girl, she started just hanging around people, just really trying to find herself. And one day I had a conversation with her, and I said to her, "What is going on? What's happening?" And she said to me, "I've just realized that I've been tithing out of fear. I've been worshiping out of fear. I've been afraid. My attendant has been based on what are people gonna say if I don't come, more than God, I want to come." And I looked at her and I'm just like, I am so glad you are owning your truth. There's so many of us that are not owning our truth. What the structures of the church are actually breaking in us more than building in us. And I think it's important. And I listened to her speaking, and I said to her, I wish we could actually have this conversation with people that feel that maybe they are in different serving ministries in the church. Maybe they are Umfundisi is always applauding them for something, and so they are always looked at. And so they it changes from being unto God to being unto that particular man. And only God can structure, and hear me, only God can structure a mess that will break those religious walls and have you focus solely on him. And that's what happened with this girl. And I look at all our friends, and I wish we could all join in one day and talk. And I look at all of us, and I look at everything that we've gone through. And by the way, I heard through the grapevine someone saying that, oh, this group used to be like this, sexero mama, no mang mang. And I'm like, and it goes back to my point, or the church or the people in the church are not I don't know if I'm gonna say not exposed enough to understand what that can still be God. It doesn't fit what you believe, but believe me, in this mess, I am finding God.
Look, don't talk about my story, because I'm here.
And I find it so strange. And Abulele, if I'm honest with you, there are so many people, even in this present time, that are so bound, not because they really, really want to be there or that's who they are. They are so bound by who they think they ought to be, you know. Funny enough, during this lockdown, I see people from our church, and I look at their WhatsApp statuses, and there are these girls that have always been very shy, very reserved, but we worship team, you know, and now they're sharing stuff, and I'm just like, look at that personality, come out. Who are you? Who said that?
Absolutely.
And knowing me, you know, there are things I'm just like, yeah, girl, just do you. And I find that there are so many people that go into church and automatically they die. They die in the midst of service. They vanish. Their personalities vanish, because then they call it we're serving God. Are we really?
Really? Because I don't know if God is calling you to live behind who you are. I mean, what is he going to save? What is he going to heal? What is he going to restore if we are living behind us to really present a version of us that is actually not even real, that we deny ourselves of true community, you know, where we could really be strength to each other. You know what I'm saying? You can't be there for something that you don't know, because I can't be vulnerable with you, because I'll be judged. I'll be told, or I'll be given a word to go home, and this is the word. But
can I tell you? And I know that I didn't want us to be for too long, and I know that we're probably gonna have to come back for like a part 2 because it's a lot. I remember, I think it's going to be my last story, and then you can take over, where God healed me of self-righteousness.
Where's my water?
Abulele, so painfully so. So painfully so. So our background, our level of faith, our level of prayer, our level of we haven't done this and we haven't done that, and you know, ask me any scripture and I will tell you. So I moved to Joburg, and you know what Durbanites say about Joburg is they were like, "Oh, this house a while." I said, "Go like call," you know. So I got here, and you know, I'm stern. Whatever you ask me, the second word is amen. Give what is in this generation. And I would minister. So we started. I'm gonna try to cut the long story short. We started the church, and I was that lady, you know, also straightforward. My messages are straightforward. Like, you know, for me, it's either black and white. Like,
white.
Like
they can't be gray.
You know, and that was me for the longest of time. I didn't notice, or even in the church, those that felt that they couldn't relate to my strength were pulling back. Those that felt like they were not in the same prayer level were pulling back. Those that felt like they couldn't relate to this anointing were pulling back. And so the crowd that was mostly around me were those that were like me. And how many of you know that's not church?
Yeah.
That's not church. And so I was going on, Abulele Njisane, I'm going on. One day I was invited to minister at a church in Durban. I'm preparing my sermon. God said to me, speak about Job's wife. I'm like, sure thing. And God is so smart. He just leaves me. I read Job. I'm like, Job's wife. I'm like, I got to go. I get to the church. I'm like, guys, Job's wife is not spiritual. Job's wife cannot pray. How can she possibly say Job must leave God and die? Job's wife needed a spiritual bamba. Job's wife should have fasted. That was me. That was the message. The church was blessed. And God just looked from heaven and we're like, okay, it's fine. Couple of months, things started happening. Things started to literally fall apart. And I remember going to God, I'm like, God, and God said, Job's wife, like, pray, fast. Like, yes, I am the land that you expected Job's wife to have done. Yes, because, you know. And I remember looking back and I was brought completely to my knees. Like, there's another experience that I will share on our part 2 that killed me, completely broke me. I booked flights, I took my kids, I went home, I went before God and said, God, I can't do this. And God said, you must know this day that I'm healing you of self-righteousness. Your self-righteousness has blocked broken people from coming to me because they think they ought to be like you and then come to me. My church is my church, not yours. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm sorry. And I cried, I think, for 3 days straight, saying to God, I am so sorry for not understanding the mandate that you have given us, right? And it's not for us to generate or produce a people that have it all together. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I didn't even realize I had taught the church to be too strong, you know, to be too strong, that God can't even touch your brokenness because you are covering it up by, oh, I'm well, all is well, God is good, all the
I can
time.
pray, yeah.
And you ought to pray. And I remember coming back and I said, okay, I need to start again. The message that I preached after that at another women's conference had me and all the ladies that had attended on our knees, like Abulele, on our knees. We cried before God. And that night, God said to me, all along, your sermons have been missing mercy.
Sure.
Mercy, what is mercy?
Wow.
Mercy is that thing that Jesus said to that woman caught in the act of adultery that says, neither do I condemn you. That's mercy. That's
Sure.
mercy. You know, mercy that gives you not just a second chance, but a
Neither.
chance.
Yeah.
You know, mercy
Yeah,
that
yeah.
restores you. In mercy,
Yeah.
that does not attach your mistake to your anointing. Mercy rewrites your story and gives you a fresh opportunity, you know, for me to still be who I am and don't even attach my brokenness to my anointing, you know. Those two things. So I learned so much in that process about myself, about how judgmental I was as an individual, how judgmental I was as a pastor. And I realized, and I look back and I thought, that's why people run away from me. Like, that's why, like, you know, Abantu, they couldn't relate. They couldn't relate to someone that was so scared to say, I'm broken too. I'm suffering too. I've got a crush on him too.
Hello.
I think that guy is fine too. Like,
like, can we talk in this room?
Can we talk? And it came down to my knees, and it rewrote it rewrote my entire ministry. Completely.
Wow.
And the more broken I become as a vessel, the more the oil is able to reach to the deeper parts. What is the scripture says, even when I make my bed in hell, you are there.
You are there.
You are there. You know, but if we are too judgmental, we cannot allow our oil to go reach down at someone we do not relate to. And God says, you already are disqualified to help someone that you judge before you counsel. If I already feel like you shouldn't have done it, I shouldn't counsel you, because I'm not going to counsel you out of grace.
What's the point?
I'm going to counsel you through judgment.
Right. I absolutely relate to what you're saying, Ayanda. If anything, for me, I always say that I was reintroduced to Christ in a new way, in my weakness, in my faults, in my brokenness, in my shame. Christ emerged out of that, you know, experience in such a new way that has helped me become the person that I constantly pursue to be, which is not perfection. Perfection is not even in that list. The word perfect is not even there. I urge, I think I would encourage another young person to say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't. Because God is not afraid of those mistakes. God is not afraid of an authentic, honest journey, because it's not like you were doing it intentionally, not like I was, you know, okay, maybe that's a different story altogether. Yeah. But, you know, if you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But, you know, even in those moments, I want to say that God has redemption all over you and I. And the work of redemption doesn't say, okay, pause now. We're no longer at work, you know. God's plan for our lives is not only divine, it's eternal. And once we understand that it's an eternal seed of God's word, it's an eternal covenant with an eternal God who's in communion with us, will always flow from eternity to eternity, then you will realize that even though for a season you were down, guess what? That God will always visit you, because there's something in you that is His, and that's you, you know? And so it never stops. I was down and out for a while, but little did I know that God had a day, God had a time, God had a moment where He decides that here I am. Let's get moving, get up. There's work to do.
Yeah.
There's vision, there's purpose on your life, and no one can do it for you. No one's gonna do it for you. I remember sitting and hearing the story of the three servants who were given the talents. It shook me out of my core. These are 17 Ayanda. And I thought to myself, no, I refuse one day to come face to face with my Lord. And I never did anything, you know, and I never served Him. And I never used up what He gave me and saw the glory come on it and multiply it and see the world become better than I found it. I refuse. And that really got my fight back in my spirit. And I said, no, 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 no. This is it. This is it. I'm in pursuit. Christ is with me. And I'm not going to be afraid for tomorrow. Because that's another thing, Ayanda. Once you have messed up, sometimes the devil will use that to continually sort of remind you that, no, don't drink too much. Don't go out too much, because remember what happened. But the devil is a liar. We know he's a defeated foe, and the work of grace is continually upon us. And if we choose to then trust grace over, like you were saying, self-righteousness, we'll always defeat the devil like that, every single day that he reminds us of the lie. Yeah.
Abulele, we're going to wrap up at past. I think we've got like a minute, you know.
Okay.
And I think we will do a part 2, because there's just so much that I want to get into. When I look at stuff here, I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't even get to that. And I want to give you just quickly, in like 2 seconds, what would you tell that young version of yourself? Like, now you're a grown woman, anybody got time, we need to move on. What would you tell that young version of yourself, you know?
Wow, Ayanda, what question. What would I tell the young Abulele? I would tell Abulele that there's more. You know, I'll tell Abu there's more, and that you don't have to, like I said, you don't have to be afraid for tomorrow. You don't have to be afraid to make mistakes. There's always more, and there's always a new day with new mercies. And also be kind. Be kind. Be kind to people. Be kind to your neighbor. Be kind. You just never know. You really never know. Yeah.
Sure. Abulele, thank you so much. I want us to do a part 2. I'm going to send questions to you before, because I don't know, from the depth of my heart, I really feel, Uti, through us sharing these experiences, these untold truths of self-discovery, you know, and where we've fallen, where we have gotten up. I think someone out there is going to get so encouraged, you know, to say, this is not an act. It's never meant to be an act, but it's a true reflection of just how human we are, how limited we are, how we can be. Like, that is who we are, you know, and a high priest wouldn't exist if we didn't need him, you know. And for people to understand, Wuti, we are still marching on, you know. And
absolutely.
Yeah, to put a note out there in the devil's face, so would la la la. La la la, la la la. You know, we're still going to march for God. We are still going to praise Him, and we still want to be the generation that sets everything ablaze for Christ. You know?
Amen.
You know what I mean? So I really want us to come back and do a part 2. I think for me, what I have taken out of you throughout this conversation is that salvation is not a performance. It is not a performance, you know. and we cannot act it out. We really cannot. And if you are acting wherever you are, God is so divine. He will find
God is coming for us.
you, and He will break down those religious walls that you have.
Yes, yes, my friend.
To be who we are. And so I want to thank you so much. And I definitely will
you.
a part 2 for us to reconnect, for us to do what God had spoken so many years ago regarding our lives. And it's going to happen. The vision may tarry because we need to know what we're talking about, but it is not dead. It will
yes.
And so I love my entire, and I tell people I'm naughty. I'm naughty as hell. I really want us to do that. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for continuing. Thank you for having enough strength to say, I'm pulling myself out of this, and it's going to become a bigger testimony, and just going for God in the way that you are going for God. And it's completely amazing. So I love you, and I hope you know that. Love you so much.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate. Thanks for really orchestrating all of this. Really, I am so grateful for you and for what you're doing.
We're gonna tell people how I nearly end up being your sister-in-law.
Can you leave that for part 2? The Lord has
out of her lineage.
I was like, the devil is a liar. No, I love you, friend. Thank you so much for doing this. Keep going, my friend. And I'm glad that you allowed God to do what He's doing in your life, my friend. I don't know if we would even be sitting here had we not succumbed to the hand of God in our lives to break us and make us up all over again. So thanks a lot, friend. I can't wait for part 2.
Thank you, Instagram family. We'll see you soon.
Bye. So, okay.